This is part 13 of Bootstrap tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss styling code blocks using Bootstrap. Here are the Bootstrap tags available for styling code blocks. For styling inline snippets of code, use the code tag. For styling multiple lines of code, pre-tag. For styling variables, var. For styling sample output, SAMP. And for styling keyboard input, KBD. Let's look at a few examples now. Let's first look at styling inline snippets of code. Here's an example. Notice the first line right here. To highlight text, use mark tag. Mark tag in this line is styled using the code tag. Similarly, U and strong tags are also styled using the code tag. Let's now look at the HTML required. Notice within the paragraph element, we have to highlight text, use, we have the code tag, and then within that we have this word mark. Look at what we have on the left and right hand side of that word. On the left we have ampersand LT semicolon. These four characters give us less than angle bracket. And on the right we have ampersand GT semicolon. These four characters are going to give us greater than angle bracket. LT stands for less than, GT stands for greater than. I have this exact same HTML already typed within Visual Studio, and when we view this page in the browser, this is how it looks like. Notice how mark, U and strong tags are styled using the code tag. One very important thing to keep in mind is that angle brackets must always be properly escaped for proper rendering. If you're wondering what's going to happen if we don't escape angle brackets, let's look at that in action. At the moment we are escaping angle brackets using ampersand LT semicolon and ampersand GT semicolon. Instead of escaping them, let's use the angle brackets themselves. So I'm going to use less than angle bracket and greater than angle bracket. Look at what has just happened. We now have a mark tag nested inside code tag. So let's save our changes, and when we reload this page, notice it didn't work as expected. And let's remove this closing mark tag. Now look at that. Inside the code tag we have this word mark, and then we have less than and greater than angle brackets. Let's save our changes, reload the page. Notice even now it's not rendered as expected. That's why it's always important to escape angle brackets for proper rendering. Now let's discuss styling multiple lines of code. Let's look at an example. Notice how these three lines of code are styled. To style multiple lines of code, use the pre-tag. Let's look at the HTML required for this. Notice within the pre-tag we have those three lines of code, and notice how the angle brackets of strong, U and mark tags are escaped. Let's look at this in action. Within the pre-tag we have those three lines of code. When we reload this page, those lines of code are styled as expected. But if you look at the code right here, notice these lines of code are not properly indented. The first line starts right here, second, third and fourth lines start right here. Now if I try to move them just below the first line, we are introducing white spaces on the left hand side of these three lines. We also have line breaks here. So let's save these changes, and when I reload this page, notice in the rendering we also have those white spaces and line breaks. So it's very important to remove any unnecessary white spaces and line breaks when using pre-tag, because those white spaces and line breaks will also be included in the rendering. Now let's look at another example of styling multiple lines of code. What we want to do now is set a maximum height of 350 pixels for the code block, and if your code block is beyond that, then we want to provide a y-axis scroll bar, as you can see here. Let's look at this in action. Let's flip to Visual Studio. So I'm going to use another pre-tag, and within this pre-tag now we have a huge C# program. So let's save these changes, and when we reload this page, notice we have that C# program. It's a huge one. Now what we want to do is set a maximum height for this code block. And since our program is beyond that code block height, we want to provide a y-axis scroll bar like this. To achieve this, we simply have to use a class provided by Bootstrap on this pre-tag, and that class is pre-scrollable. Let's save our changes, and when we reload this page, now look at this. The maximum height of this window is 350 pixels. Since our C# program is larger than that, we get a scroll bar. Now we can use that scroll bar to see the complete program. And here is the HTML required for that. Let's now discuss styling variables. To style variables, we use the var tag. Notice how these three variables, full name, first name, and last name, are styled. Let's look at this in action. So here, notice we have the variables full name, first name, and last name inside var tags. So let's save these changes, and when we reload this, notice how the variables are styled using those var tags. Here's that same HTML which we have seen just now. Let's now discuss styling sample output. Let's say, for example, you have a C# program, and that C# program is displaying these two words, hello world, and you want to style that output using Bootstrap. To do that, we use the SAMP tag. Let's look at this in action. Notice here within the h4 tag we have this word output, and this is the output of our C# program that we want to style. So we are placing that inside SAMP tag. Let's save our changes, and when we reload this page, notice how the output of our C# program is styled using the SAMP tag. Here is that exact same HTML. Finally, let's discuss styling keyboard input. Let's look at an example. With Visual Studio, the keyboard shortcut for commenting code is Ctrl-K and Ctrl-C. For uncommenting, Ctrl-K and Ctrl-U. Notice Ctrl, K, C, and U. All these are keyboard inputs. To style keyboard inputs with Bootstrap, we use the KBD tag. Let's look at the HTML required for this. Notice Ctrl, K, C, and U. All of them are inside KBD tags, and this is what is making them render as you see here. Let's look at this in action. So I have the exact same HTML that we have seen on the slide. Let's save our changes, and when we reload this page, notice how Ctrl-K, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-K, and Ctrl-U are rendered. Since they are inside the KBD tag, they are styled by Bootstrap as you see here. Thank you for listening and have a great day.